Hello and welcome to the Gonzales Mitchell Show. I'm Clay Mitchell,
And I'm Patrick Gonzales.
and today our special guest is Commissioner Corchiarino, Chris Corchiarino of Queen Anne's County. He's here today to talk to us about the Bay Bridge, traffic, and the blueprint. Chris, for those who don't know you, tell us a little bit about you.
Okay. I'm most known for living on the same street as Clay. That's my claim to fame. Clay voted for me because he thought he would get his street plowed first in the wintertime, and that hasn't worked out. So I don't think I'll get his vote again. Other than that, been a county commissioner for 6 years now. I'm in my second term. In my first term, I was president of the county commissioners for 2 years. I'm a lawyer by day. I serve Board of Trustees for the Chesapeake Bay Trust, Board of Trustees for Local Government Insurance Trust. I'm on the Upper Shore Regional Council, which is made up of Kent, Queen Anne's, and Cecil County. I was chairman of that organization for 2 years. Live on Kent Island, right down the road from Clay.
And you have a beautiful wife and beautiful daughters.
I'm more blessed than I should be.
I'm trying to keep you out of trouble there, buddy. So, Chris, one of the major things, living here on Kent Island and in Queen Anne's County is the Bay Bridge and traffic and that situation. And I have to tell you, one of the great things the commissioners helped put together was to block off the access to the Bay Bridge during those peak traffic hours to allow local people like me to be able to get to the grocery store and do things, also allowing the first responders to get where they need to go. Tell us how that came about and what your thoughts are on that, and will it continue next year?
Yeah, and so we like to call it ramp management rather than block off because it sounds a lot nicer when you call it ramp management. It sounds a lot more proactive, and a lot of the credit goes to Commissioner Moran with he had the beach to bridge plan that he proposed to Maryland Department of Transportation a while back on how to try to keep the traffic on Route 50 so the locals can have the side roads. That was not initially adopted by the state, but we continued to build those relationships with the stakeholders in the state and said, hey, what if we do it like this? What if we understand you can't close the ramps to just locals. It has to be open to everybody because the Commerce Clause won't allow us to do selective closings. But what if we close it to everybody? Certain exits, which includes people like you and me, Clay, who have to backtrack if we want to get to the bridge. But in doing that, we're keeping the main through traffic on Route 50. And so what a lot of people don't keep in mind is back in the old days, Clay, like you and I knew, we knew the secret side roads that you could take to get around the traffic. And this is back when people actually had to take a map with them or print out MapQuest. And now with the navigation software, people get pushed off into the side roads automatically. And Kent Island comes to a standstill when we have really bad traffic. So if you're trying to get to church on a Sunday, you can't. If you're trying to get to the grocery store, you can't. If you want to come and see your grandkids play at the soccer game, you can't, because we can't get around. Our side roads are jam-packed. The other issue is first responders, right? You can't get to the accident scene, but even more than that, we have all volunteer fire department here. So they got to get to the firehouse first to get to the equipment, then get to the scene. So they're fighting the traffic in two different directions. And we've had instances where, someone has a heart attack. We've been able to get to them quickly, keep their heart beating, and get them to some of the amazing hospitals that we have here in Maryland to keep them alive. Those same instances that would happen in, like, say, March or April, where we save them, if they were to happen in the summertime when the side roads are clogged up, those first responders are still going to try to get around that traffic, but they're going to be hindered in doing that. And when we're talking about seconds and minutes making a difference, that's life-changing, right? So that was a huge problem. We would have first responders and ambulance would pick somebody up, bring them to Anne Arundel County, and then they can't get back because of the traffic, right? There are times when we're down to just a few units in the county. So something had to be done. It was a public health concern. So in closing ramps to keep the traffic onto 50, that means if somebody jumps off, when they try to go all the way to Bay Bridge on the side road, they got to turn around and they got to go back another 4 or 5 miles and get back onto 50. It was met with a lot of resistance at first, including from locals. But what we found is once it was put into place, those side roads where the ramps are being managed, traffic moves freely. As you saying, Clay, you're able to get around. It's life-changing. We like to be able to have the ramp management go further up, close off a few more exits. People still try to jump off at Nesbitt Road. And so folks in Graysonville and Queenstown are still feeling the brunt of it. But what we know is this program is working. And it's a short-term solution, right? We know that the biggest issue we have is the Bay Bridge is a choke point. It was built in 1952 for the first one, 1973 for the second one. And since then, we've seen an explosion of growth in Ocean City. Probably 15,000 condominium units built in Ocean City in 1970s alone. So a lot of people go on the weekends and they're coming through that same choke point. A bridge that was meant to handle the traffic that we had in the 70s can't handle the traffic that we have now. It's like pouring a gallon of milk into a pint-sized funnel. It's going to overflow eventually. And when it overflows, it's our side roads that get attacked. So this is put into place to give some relief to Queen Anne's County citizens until the bigger project of another crossing can be accomplished.
Patrick, he could speak more on this. He did a poll, Patrick, what was it, 3 or 4 weeks ago on transportation that showed.
Yeah, it was about a month ago.
Yeah, what were the results of that poll again, Patrick?
Well, 95% of Marylanders say that funding transportation infrastructure is important. 2/3 say it's very important. And Chris lays out a perfect example of why it's very important. I mean, I moved to Kent Island 3 years after the second span was built. It was different back then. That was before Donald Schaefer got elected governor and instituted the Reach the Beach. And it was a pain back then. But Chris, back when I first moved, the Kent Narrows Bridge literally was a 2-lane drawbridge.
That's right.
And during the summer, traffic would pop. There was this dude that would ride his bike with a popsicle bin on his back. And he became, I think, a millionaire just selling popsicles to stranded or to motorists sitting still. So the world's changed, but brother, I hear you, man. That traffic in these days during the summer is got to be unimaginable.
Yeah, you probably remember people would stop on the side of the road. Cars would be stopped on 50. People would have picnics. They would throw a Frisbee because the drawbridge was up. You couldn't go anywhere.
Right.
And even, I mean, I go back so far, there were even still some horse and buggies left over where they would, put the horse to the side, feed them some oats, and they would have a picnic themselves.
Right. I got to tell you, Chris, that program, Lori, both my wife Lori and I are able to get out and about and do what we need to do. And that, in my view, was a success. And it's continued to continue to have it. I think it's a blessing for everybody here on the island and the first responders. I think that was a resounding success.
Yeah, the emails we're getting now are a lot kinder than the ones we got 3 months ago. We got some not so kind emails from before it really went into place. But I think we've had a few people reach out and say, "Hey, look, I was wrong. I'm sorry. I don't like that I have to backtrack if I want to go to the bridge, but if I got to go to Safeway, this is great."
Yeah, yeah. And everything that goes wrong is your fault, right?
That's it. We do it on purpose.
That's what I thought.
That comes with the territory in politics. Right. You both know that. So.
Right. Now, the other big thing facing the county is this blueprint, the educational blueprint. How's that affecting Queen Anne's County right now?
Yeah, and I think you had Larry Porter from Caroline County on a while back. He was talking about this.
Right.
All of the counties are being hit with this. It's here's the blueprint. It's like a lot of other things that you see that might come out of Annapolis. Is there's some good intentions on how to make things better, but good intentions and how do you fund it? That's where the rubber hits the road. And unfortunately, when the blueprint was put through, they didn't think about the funding part. And they also didn't think about the fact that we're going to have economic downturns and things are going to happen that's going to change the state's economy and change the way we fund things. So what we have now is a lot of forced additional costs on the county that we have to fund for education without sufficient backing from the state on that. And just to give you some examples, right? So starting teacher salary has to go up to 60K. And if you're moving the starting salaries to 60K, that teacher that's been there for 8 years, they don't want to see that starting person being, raised up to almost what they're making. They're going to say, hey,
Sure.
we have to get more too. So you have that salary compression. So in FY25, they'd spend $3.6 million just to address raising those salaries up and addressing some of the salary compression. Now,
that's
maybe
3.6 3.6 million county dollars.
3.6 million county dollars that went in there. And so for some of your listeners out there, maybe that doesn't sound like a lot. If you're in Montgomery County or Anne Arundel County, right, where we're talking about lot bigger budgets. But keep in mind, this is Queen Anne's County. We have about 50,000 people in the county. The Board of Education budget is a little bit above 100 million, right? So we're not like, I don't know what Anne Arundel County, I think someone told me they're $3 billion for their,
Right.
There's a bit of a difference there, right? And how you're going to go about doing that. So $3.6 million is a lot of money. Then you have AP testing, which in FY24 was an additional 76,000, 18,000 more for SAT testing, 327,000 for Chesapeake College, 43,000 for Anne Arundel Community College for this dual enrollment they have. 190,000 for the National Board of Teachers. So just those costs, in addition, is another 355,000. 655,000 in addition to 3.6. So what do we get from the state? Well, 2023, we got from the state 6,854 per pupil. And in 2024, it only went up $72 per pupil. So with about 7,100 students, the state share went up about 515,000. But meanwhile, we got cost expenditures of more than 4.2 million just for those. So what has the county done? 7.5% increase in our funding in FY24 and an equivalent of that for FY25. Our county budget is only growing at 4.1. So you see the math won't work long term. We're growing one area a lot more than we're growing the other. And so what do you have to do? You either can't keep up, you got to raise taxes, or you got to cut services. And that's not something that we want to have to do because of mandates that are coming from the state. So we really need the state to kick in. If it had just increased by half as much as the county did, we wouldn't have some of the budget problems we're currently having for education funding. So that's a lot of counties are facing this issue. And it's got to the point now where it's all the counties and Baltimore City are all going to the General Assembly and saying, we got to look at this again because the math isn't working and we're all going to have problems.
I think the governor made a few comments over the summer that maybe they need to lengthen the deadline to implement all of this. I don't know if that's going to happen or not. But as a citizen, as a constituent, I've got to say that the past 12, 14 years, the county commissioners have done a great job managing the budget, making all expenditures reasonable, and property taxes really haven't been touched.
Right.
This puts you all in a box where it's not the commissioner's fault. It's nothing that you all decided. But if you come to the point where you have to look at raising revenues, meaning property taxes, the piggyback taxes, et cetera, you're in a lose-lose situation politically, I think. But
it's all the commissioner's fault, Clay.
It's all the commissioner's fault, and you all have to do with what the right thing to do is. And I know, being in politics for 6 decades and around it, that local politicians have less to do with policy. They have to do with funding fire, police, recreation, the sort.
Right.
And
we build parks, we fix potholes, that kind of stuff. Right. Well, and both you and Patrick, I think, can see this. How is this going to get fixed? Is if you really want to do major changes, it usually happens in the beginning of a term. So I think what's going to happen is we're going to see a lot of can kicking until after the next General Assembly and governor's election, because nobody wants to be seen as cutting education or hurting education before then. And they have some budget problems coming up at the state level. So I don't know about you guys, but I suspect we're going to see some can kicking going on.
Patrick, you've seen a lot of can kicking in your day.
Oh boy, have I. I guess the first question, Chris, that pops into my mind is how empirically, whatever measures are out there, how does the quality of public education in Queen Anne's County today compare to 30 years ago? That would be my first thought. Is it better than it was 30 years ago?
I will. So I can answer from some experience here. I am a graduate of Queen Anne's County Public Schools. I graduated from Queen Anne's County High School, and I have kids who are in the Queen Anne's County Public Schools now. And I will say, I think for the most part, our teachers do a great job. I think there's a great education that's out there. Unfortunately, what this does is with these budget constraints is we're creating internal turmoil between parents, teachers, the other citizens who don't have kids, in school and what they're going to be paying for. And we're creating this strife from everybody. So instead of all rowing together, it seems like sometimes we're pointing fingers, and I don't think that helps the situation. So Patrick, I think it's better, but what I'm worried about is if we don't solve this, it demoralizes people. And I'm worried about how that's going to affect education.
Yeah.
And I agree with you. So far, we've had terrific schools, both Queen Anne's County High School and Kent Island High School. All of the kids that go there seem to do very well. And like you, Chris, I think we have a very well qualified batch of teachers teaching our children over here.
Yeah.
Now, I know you wanted to touch on solar.
I think this is going to be a topic that you're going to be hearing a lot more about. The state has lofty goals on renewables and the direction we're going to go in that. And a lot of that is, how do we electrify the state going forward? And solar is one of the things that they're going to be pursuing. And I'll be honest, I'm not an anti-EV, anti-solar person. Maybe you suspect that from our party, but that's not me. I think as part of a comprehensive energy solution, you got to look at solar, right? We got to look at all renewables, but the tried and true energy generation can't be overlooked. And what can the system handle? And what are the unintended consequences of what we're going to do? So what we're finding now with solar is a lot of energy consumption on the other side of the bridge from here, but the land is expensive. So they're looking over to the Eastern Shore and saying, hey, you got a lot of that farmland. Maybe we could throw some solar panels up there. And in Queen Anne's County, before I was a commissioner, the commissioners looked long and hard at this. And they said, look, we know what's coming. And we know that there's going to be some solar, but we don't want our beautiful farmland countryside gobbled up by solar panels because it's ugly, right? I mean, we would rather look out the open field and see a combine out there than see solar panels. So we designated certain areas where solar could be allowed, closer to where the transmission lines are, so you're getting the power out there. And we thought we did a good job of doing what our share was going to be on to managing solar. But now it's not good enough. We're hearing more where the state's going to start be pushing more solar onto the Eastern Shore and preempting local zoning laws on where can solar panels go, how big can those solar arrays be, buffers that we require them to put up to sort of block the view of the solars. And so my concern is it's going to be similar to what we just talked with the blueprint. Mandates that mean well coming from Annapolis, but not looking at what the ramification is going to be. And we're going to start seeing a lot more solar panels taking up the farmland on the Eastern Shore, not just to sort of power on the shore, but to send power over to the Western Shore. And when you start getting rid of our farmland, you're getting, Clay, you're getting rid of the Eastern Shore way of life and what we love out here.
And this is a power. This is a local power that's being taken back, the zoning power, to a large extent. That's interesting. Go
Patrick,
ahead,
yeah.
Patrick.
Yeah, Chris, you said twice mandates that mean well.
Yeah.
Do they really mean well? Do they really mean well, Chris?
Well, I'm trying to be nice here. You know, I'm a politician, so I gotta say nice things about people. I'll tell you what. I am. My view is I don't do politics. I do governance. What works, right? How do we? What are problems and how do we fix them? So I try not to get too much into what different political parties are saying. So I understand where some of the thought process is coming from on renewables. So that's where I say I think they mean well. But some of it's not, right? Some of it's business, Patrick. It's big business. There's a lot of money to be made in that, and particularly if you can get cheap land. And so that's why it's being pushed out. So I think you're right. It's not all good intentions. I think there is some of that in there, but there's a lot that's not. And we're also not looking at how are laws passed in Annapolis, people passing laws in Annapolis who don't live on the Eastern Shore, how is that affecting the Eastern Shore way of life? And that's a concern from me. And preempting our local control to say where and how we're going to grow and how we want our community to look, I think that's a real danger when you have a centralized government telling us how to do that on the shore.
And that happens to the Eastern Shore all the time, in my
All the
opinion, in Annapolis. Well, Chris, we want to have you back on again when, say, session kicks in and there's some legislation going on. I'm sure you're keeping track of all that. You could update us on what's going on here in Queen Anne's County, the beautiful side of the Chesapeake Bay. But unfortunately, we've come to the end of our time together, and it's time to say goodbye, Patrick.
Goodbye, Patrick.
Goodbye, Patrick.
Goodbye, Patrick. And thanks, Chris, for coming on. We'll have you on again soon.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks,
Appreciate
Chris.
it very much.
Thank you.